Hello, Wonderhussy here, standing in front of a slag heap in beautiful Montana. That's right, the state that's known for its beautiful mountains and prairies and crystal clear streams that are so good for trout fishing is also home to a lot of industrial decay. Okay, I just did a video in the town or the city of Butte, Montana, right down the road from where I am now, which was one of the biggest copper mines in the entire world. Unfortunately, because they mined copper there for over 100 years, the town is pretty well polluted, and in fact, it's a Superfund site. But there's another town just up the highway from Butte called Anaconda, which is what I'm parked on the outskirts of right now. Anaconda, as in the Anaconda Mining Company, which was the company that did almost all the copper mining in Butte, and consequently, the company that was responsible for a lot of the toxic mess left behind. Now, if you watched that video that I made in Butte, well, I went to this big hole in the ground they have there called the Berkeley Pit. A nasty, toxic pit. Incidentally, not the only one I've seen today. Anyway, a nasty, toxic pit full of this creepy blue water that's so acidic. It has the same pH level as gastric acid, and it kills anything that lands on it. So they have to play these weird sirens to keep the birds off of it. And oh my gosh, it was absolutely fascinating. And if you did see that video, well, you might have wondered what they did with all the ore that they gouged out of that Berkeley pit. You know, in that video, I showed that giant piece of earth-moving equipment with a huge bucket on the front that would scoop huge bucketfuls of the earth that presumably was laced with sweet, sweet copper out of that pit, and then they had to truck it somewhere, and they had to refine it or get the copper out of it. So how exactly was that done, you might be wondering? Well, they took all that ore just up the road here to good old Anaconda, where there was a giant smelter. Okay, I guess in mining, a smelter is basically like a giant furnace that you dump the ore into, and I think it heats the ore up to even higher than melting point, and I don't know, somehow it separates the ore out from the rest of the rock that it's in, and then, you know, you can just take the sweet, sweet copper and dump the rest in a nearby creek or whatever's the most convenient. Which, sadly, is exactly what they did most of the time, and which is why both Butte and Anaconda are both Superfund sites. That's right, if you know anything about toxic waste, you know that the U.S. government, the federal government, has a program called the Superfund program, where they, I guess, clean up toxic messes that were left behind by, well, it's mostly like chemical companies, manufacturing. There's a lot of them back east. A really famous one is the Love Canal in upstate New York. There was some chemical factory that was just dumping its waste right into the creek behind the factory, and next thing you know, there's a bunch of cancer cases in the neighborhood, and people start wondering what's going on. And well, say what you will about the federal government and the EPA, but at least there is this agency that oversees these giant, nasty, toxic messes and forces the companies responsible for them to clean them up. Okay, speaking of toxic messes, I actually think this slag heap is absolutely fascinating, and I would gladly hike right up on it. Frankly, I'd climb all the way to the top and it's fascinating. This is stuff we don't like to think about. You know, these are the byproducts of all the fancy gadgets we enjoy every day in our modern lives. You know, like the cell phone that I'm talking to you on right now is full of all kinds of minerals that unfortunately have to be gouged from the earth in one manner or another. And, well, sometimes the process leaves some pretty unsightly remains behind. You know, I feel like I'm at the beach the day after the apocalypse. The day after the nuclear holocaust has turned all the sand dunes black, and the detritus of man's futile attempt to conquer the earth lies scattered about in pathetic piles of meaninglessness. I'm serious, you could film an awesome sci-fi movie out here. And fortunately, while there are plenty of no trespassing signs forbidding you to go on that side of the fence, there's no signs over here on this side of the fence, so at least I can sort of walk the perimeter and check it out. And golly, the ground on this side of the fence isn't really that much better anyway. Yikes. I think the whole reason they have this fenced off is there's still super elevated levels of arsenic and other harmful chemicals in the ground all around that smelter. And we'll get back to the smelter in a minute. I don't know, I'm not gonna be here that long. Hopefully I don't breathe in too much arsenic dust. I'll have to tread lightly so as not to stir too much up. But I don't know, you're not allowed to get up close and personal with that smelter smokestack. So I thought, well, if this is the closest I can get, then let me at least check out some of this infrastructure. You know, I love me some industrial decay, and I would feel sorely remiss if I came all the way up here and didn't at least take a closer look at whatever this is. I mean, it kind of looks like Satan's bunghole, if you know what I mean. I don't know, it's just some old collapsed scaffolding. I'm not sure toward what end. I'm not even sure what this formation we're looking at is made out of, because it looks like it's just loose slag, for lack of a better word. But then, you know, underneath here, it almost looks like it's some kind of stone. I'll zoom in, like it's hardened over the years and become some kind of like a sandstone, a slag stone, if you will. Anyway, back to the old smelter up on the hill. Most of the smelter was demolished back in the 1980s when to back up, the Anaconda mining company basically went out of business, sold out to Arco, the Atlantic Richfield company, but Arco, like the gas station. Well, I guess Arco wanted to get into the mining industry, and so they bought the Anaconda Mining Company, which had been mining copper over in Butte for over 100 years. But shortly after that, like only a few years after they bought it, the price of metals was so low that I guess it wasn't worthwhile for them to even mine it anymore. So they only owned it for like 5 years, and then they shut the mines down permanently. And so I think that's when this smelter was decommissioned, and the entire facility was demolished, except for the smokestack. I guess it had become sort of a landmark over the years, and so the people of Anaconda actually lobbied to save the stack. That's right, save the stack. And I guess by the efforts of their campaign, whatever they did, whoever was in charge, I guess Arco, whoever was in charge of cleaning up this site, decided to leave the stack standing on the hill for all to enjoy. And believe it or not, a lot of people do enjoy it. There's even a state park all around the smokestack. That's right, a state park. I didn't go to the park because the view from the park was even worse. You could hardly see anything. Like, I feel like over here, we can at least zoom in and maybe kind of get a closer look at it. Okay, apologies for my crummy digital zoom, but I guess this is the best we can do. You might be wondering why they would build a state park around an old smokestack and why anybody would bother coming to check it out. Well, that's because this Anaconda smokestack is the tallest surviving masonry structure in the world. Okay, I guess there are taller smokestacks, but they're made out of poured concrete. And there were taller masonry smokestacks, but all of those have either fallen down on their own or been demolished. This is the tallest surviving masonry smokestack in the world? Yeah, in the world. It's about 585 feet tall, and the inside diameter at the bottom is 76 feet, and the inside diameter at the top is 60 feet. Okay, I'm no geometry whiz, but I'm pretty sure I remember that diameter is the distance from one side to another of a circle. So that thing is 76 feet wide at the bottom and 60 feet wide at the top. That's pretty impressive. According to Wikipedia, you could even fit the whole Washington Monument inside this thing. Basically, if you crammed it in, the Washington Monument would fit inside the Anaconda Smelter Smokestack. Anaconda, gobbling up one national monument at a time. Smelting democracy. Oh God, I hate to think how nasty and toxic the water in this poor little creek that's flowing out of that debris field is. I mean, it's really sad because if you look around, there's beautiful, well, I was gonna say flowers, I guess those are weeds, but you know, gorgeous grasses, and then look at the mountains in the background, just an absolutely amazing landscape until you pan over this way, and that's when reality sets in. I mean, it can't be that bad because, well, first of all, that mattress hasn't been completely eaten up yet, and then also it looks like there's some footprints in the mud, so golly. I've been known to skinny dip in some pretty raunchy places, but that is one place I wouldn't even want to put a single toe into. No, sir, I'm more or less happy just poking around the perimeter. I mean, yeah, sure, it would be super duper duper easy to just slip right through this barbed wire and climb all over the place. Like, this really is like some kind of Mad Max post-apocalyptic playground. At least if you're a weirdo like me, that is. But unfortunately, they have it all fenced off and all these no trespassing signs, restricted area, authorized personnel only, visitors must check in at office trailer. See that though? Atlantic Richfield Company. That's ARCO. That's what ARCO stands for, and I guess they're still in charge of this site. I mean, that's kind of the crummy thing in this whole Superfund business is ARCO bought Anaconda in 1977, and so I think Anaconda had already been mining for copper for 100 years at that point, and basically caused all this damage. Well, here comes ARCO, you know, runs it for a few years, and then after only 5 years, they get stuck footing the bill for the cleanup. How do you like that? You know, because the Anaconda company wasn't around anymore, and well, that's the way the Superfund policy works. Last one out, turn out the lights, or pay billions of dollars in cleanup costs. Either way. Anyway, yeah, it would be super easy to get in there, and oh my gosh, I sure would like to poke around those abandoned buildings, not to mention go right up to the bottom of that dang smelter. Arsenic or no arsenic, I mean, I would wear appropriate footwear and clean myself very thoroughly afterward, and realistically, what am I going to see being right up next to it? I don't know. It just seems like the scale would be so much more impressive standing right at the bottom of it, looking up. Okay, I'm zoomed in as far as I can on this thing, and gosh, I mean, it must be absolutely massive. I don't have anything to put at the base to show you for comparison, obviously, but man, that is one big smokestack. And a sobering reminder of what our quest for convenience has done to this planet. I mean, yes, I love having this cell phone to talk to, and I love having this car to drive, and I love being able to do any number of things that we couldn't do without mining. So I'm not anti-mining. I'd be the world's biggest hypocrite if I was. I just think it's kind of gross, the messes some of these mines leave behind. You know, if the EPA hadn't stepped in and forced ARCO to clean all this up, which, by the way, have they really cleaned anything up? Maybe it's still a work in progress. I think with the Superfund thing, it's a really long process. And from what I read, the town of Butte, or the city of Butte, is just now really getting its act together. It's pretty nice in Butte right now. I don't know, Anaconda might be farther down the pipeline, so maybe they haven't gotten around to cleaning this up yet. But anyway, if it wasn't for the EPA forcing these companies to clean up after themselves, well, I have a feeling a lot of these mining companies would just leave stuff behind and just take off. Like with Anaconda, they started mining something down in Chile, so I think they basically just abandoned their operations up in Butte. I mean, they didn't officially abandon them, but, you know, all their efforts were going on in Chile, and then that's why they finally just sold out, I guess. I don't know. I know I've been to so many dirty, gross, polluted, abandoned mine and mill sites from years ago, you know, back in the day when there was no oversight. And so that just makes me think that if there were no oversight today, people would be doing the same dang thing. And they probably are over in China. That's why I'm doubly in favor of mining in the US, you know. Like right now there's a lot of lithium being prospected down around where I live in Death Valley. There's a lot of lithium deposits. And we need a lot of lithium for all them purty little Teslas and Rivians and all them electric vehicles. But nobody wants the lithium to be mined in their backyard. You know, there's always some endangered plant or some endangered mole or some endangered butt plug. I don't know. There's always some endangered thing, and oh, we can't mine for the lithium there. Well, I get that. I'm in favor of moles, plants, and butt plugs as much as anybody. But at the same time, I'm a practical person. I understand we have to get lithium somewhere. And theoretically, there's more environmental oversight over lithium that is mined here in the US. Currently, we're getting most of our lithium from Chile and Australia, and I don't really know how good of whatever their equivalent of the EPA is down there. I mean, I've seen pictures, or I've looked on Google Maps. If you go on Google Maps, you can look at some of these mining towns in China, or like right on the Mongolian border. I think there's some huge Chinese mining town with a giant toxic lake that makes the Berkeley Pond look like a joke. I mean, this lake in China, whatever they're doing, smelting, refining minerals in the area, they're just dumping this slag into some natural depression, and it made this horrifying but fascinating, creepy ass lake. I encourage you to look it up, and I don't remember the name of the town, and I don't know exactly where in China it is, so I don't know how you're gonna look it up, but if you can find it, holy moly, it's amazing. In the same warped sense that this is amazing. And I don't know, I actually do think this is amazing. I mean, this amazes me that this much crap was able to be dug up and sifted and refined and whatever, just dumped here. Just goes to show, say what you will about man, but he ain't lazy. Anyway, I think the town of Anaconda actually has been cleaned up quite a bit. I did come here once with my sister back in 2016, just sort of poking around, and as I recall, it didn't look too bad. So let's take a drive into town, because while I'm here anyway, we can't get any closer to the smokestack. That's all you're gonna get to see of that. But there is one other kind of weird thing of note in Anaconda. Okay, before we go check out that other thing, I thought I would stop by the official state park viewing area for this smelter so you can see what I'm talking about. I mean, they have this little parking area and some flags and some informational stuff, but golly, you're pretty far away from that dang smelter. So I feel like where we went was 1,000 times more interesting, but there is some cool stuff here. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure what that is, some kind of giant bucket from like an excavator or something. And then there's these cool statues of miners. Look at this. These are cute. Oh, my friend Ross, the one-legged miner, needs these at his mine. Oh my god. Aw. In honor of the men and women who worked for the Anaconda Copper Mining Company, or ARCO, from 1883 to 1980. Like I said, almost 100 years. No wonder that slag heap was so big. Look at that. One of the flagpoles is empty. I guess that's where the Anaconda or ARCO flag used to fly. Boy, don't that say it all. Okay, this is actually pretty cool though. They actually have this big circular pit, I guess you could call it, that shows you exactly that this is the inside diameter of the top of that smokestack. The upper diameter, okay, at the top where it's narrower. The bottom, I guess the whole base of this plaza shows what the diameter is at the bottom, and I thought that was pretty interesting. See what I mean? Like that thing in the middle just shows how wide across the top is. The bottom is like the whole plaza. And then look at this. It shows you what I was talking about. I guess you can fit the Washington Monument inside the Washoe Smelter. I guess that's what it's officially called, the Washoe Smelter Stack. Which is interesting because I know the word Washoe from Washoe County up by Reno, and we are a long way from Reno. But I guess one mining community is just like another. I don't know. Oh, here it talks about what the contributions of the Washoe smelter were and what all that copper that they mined and smelted was used for. I mean, yeah, a lot of it was used for bullet casings in World War I, World War II, but I think the biggest use of the copper was right around the early 1900s when they invented electricity and the telephone. Well, now all of a sudden, thousands and thousands and thousands of homes all over America and the world needed copper wiring so they could have telephones and they could have electricity. You know, they could keep the light on after the sun went down. That's what created the demand for all this copper. Ah, look at, there's some pictures here, and hopefully you'll be able to see them, of what it looked like when the smelter was in operation. Oh my goodness, I sure would have enjoyed being in there and seeing that. I bet it was super loud and super hot and super stinky. It says overhead crane pouring a molten slag return in the reverberatory furnace. Golly, and then there's a picture of these guys working down in all that mess. Oh, I can't imagine. It says smelterman poling the copper casting furnace. Pine logs were used to help burn off oxygen before the copper was cast into anodes. In the early 70s, natural gas replaced the burning timber in this process, but at the time of this photo, yeah, these dudes are just manhandling these giant tree trunks. Holy cow. Man, I don't know what they put in this thing. Maybe they just scooped some of that slag heap off, but it smells kind of funky. It smells like asphalt, I guess, whatever they make asphalt out of. Oh, here's a cool photo. This shows you what the whole smelter complex looked like before, I guess, the EPA made them bulldoze everything. So those slag heaps we were looking at, I don't know where they were, somewhere over there maybe. And so maybe that's just like all the rubble of all this stuff that they knocked down and like just shoved into a big pile. But I do love the fact that the good people of Anaconda rallied to at least save the smokestack. You know, Paris might have its Eiffel Tower and Washington might have its monument, but by golly, they got a stack in Anaconda. Okay, anyway, back in the car so I can show you the other interesting thing in Anaconda. See what I mean? This town looks pretty tidy. Folks mowing their lawns, flying their flags, taking their boats out on the weekend. It looks like any town USA. You'd never know you were in a Superfund site. And if it wasn't so dang cold here in the wintertime, I'd consider moving here. I mean, I bet you can get these houses for pretty cheap. And look how cute the old downtown is. Oh my goodness. It's an honest-to-goodness movie theater showing Indiana Jones. And it's interesting, the name of the theater is the Washoe 2. So gosh, I don't know why there were so many things named Washoe around here, but there's gotta be some kind of weird Reno Butte connection. Maybe they're sister cities. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay, well, I didn't come here to look at the movie theater. I actually came to show you something across the street here in this park, and I can see it already. Okay, this is something I read about on Roadside America, which is a website that lists all the funky, weird roadside attractions you can stop at if you're on a road trip. And they call this the all-nighter JFK. Because according to the fine folk at Roadside America, well, I guess JFK looks really hungover and his jacket's all wrinkled. And so they say he looks like he just got back from an all-night bender in Vegas with a Rat Pack. I don't know, Roadside America. I'm not sure I'm with you on this one. I feel bad because I think the guy who sculpted it, Larry Calnan, isn't that him right there? Look, there's a picture of him standing next to his sculpture. And far be it for me to laugh at somebody's artistry. I've certainly never cast anything in bronze, and if I did, it would probably look 10 times worse than this. I don't know. What do you think? Is this a really bad likeness of JFK? I mean, from this angle, he kind of looks like Roman Polanski, which is never a good thing. But I'll zoom in just so you can get a good look. Hey, that was Roadside America, not me. I just came here to look at the smokestack. This was just a detour.